Gentlemen, hello. We have now a new seminar, which is a part 2 of the seminar that we started, a webinar that we started a week ago. And what we wanted to do was basically to hear from the both sides of the conflict. On the 21st, we talked to the Armenian experts who gave us the view from Armenia of how these renewed hostilities look from Armenia. And now we will listen to our friends from Azerbaijan. Let me very briefly introduce them, although for most of our viewers they did no introductions since they've been our partners and friends for so long time. Dr. Farid Shafiyev, or Ambassador Farid Shafiyev, is the chairman of the Center of Analysis of International Relations in Baku, and Ahmad Alili, director of the Caucasus Policy Analysis Center. And obviously, as you know, what we are going to talk about is renewed hostilities around Karabakh or between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and see what is the Azeri position this time. Again, the Armenian position we already have. It's available on our webpage. You can take a look. And without further ado, I'll give the floor to Dr. Shafiyev, who will talk about his view on the position of Azerbaijan, what Azerbaijan wants to achieve and how it sees the future.
Well, thank you very much. Always pleasure to be with the Rondeli Foundation, a lot of friends. Indeed, also our partner. So straight to the matter. After the Second Karabakh War, we signed trilateral agreement with Armenia. Basically, that was the agreement statement negotiated with the mediation of Russia. It stipulated the withdrawal of Armenian troops from the Azerbaijan territories by force. We compelled Armenia to leave our territories, but free territories, Agdam, Lachin, and Kalbajar was still under Armenian occupation, and they left. So long years of negotiations brought no result. Basically, within the Minsk group, OEC Minsk group, we elaborated documents called Madrid Principles, but they were jettisoned by Armenian side in the spring 2020, when Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan said that we need new documents, so we are not considering any documents on the negotiation table. After that, we worked with the Armenian side in 4 directions. First, peace treaty. Second, delimitation of our borders. Third, the opening of the transportation corridors. And fourth is the complex of humanitarian issues, which includes issues like Armenian detainees, Azerbaijani missing persons, or I mean, both sides has missing persons, cultural heritage, etc. And here I'm emphasizing that both sides has voiced concern about the cultural heritage, about the missing persons. Though the number of Azerbaijan missing persons, 4,000 from the First Karabakh War, is much greater than the Armenian ones. Anyway, that's the agenda of peace between the 2 states. So the solution is both simple and complex, because basically what is Azerbaijan proposing, and in February this year, Azerbaijan proposed 5-item peace treaty as a basis. But core of this peace offer is the mutual recognition of territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and Armenia. It looks that Pashinyan accepted. They voiced that they see no problem with the accepting Azerbaijan proposals, but that means, if we're speaking about mutual recognition of Azerbaijan's territorial integrity and Armenia, that implies that Armenia will recognize Karabakh as a part of Azerbaijan. And here the play begins. Oh, we recognize Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, Pashinyan said in 1991, but in the meantime, Pashinyan in August 2019 openly said that Karabakh is Armenia. He was in Khankendi on Azerbaijan's territory, and he said in Armenian language, Artsakh is Armenia. So we have these contradictory statements, and up until now, even today, on one side, Armenia saying that we ready to recognize Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, but they also saying that the Karabakh should be resolved, the status of Karabakh. So the Armenian diplomats, Minister of Foreign Affairs, regularly speaking about independence of Karabakh, which was attained in 1991 during this Sham referendum, etc. So we need to resolve these contradictions, and especially in the context of war in Ukraine, of the conflict in Moldova, in Georgia, and some post-Soviet conflicts. What Azerbaijan offers comes in line with the unified approach that we will recognize territorial integrity of Armenia and Azerbaijan, and will be working towards outstanding issues, delimitation, opening of transportation corridors, etc. I'm happy to elaborate more on all these items, but since it's limited to 5 minutes introduction, so I will stop here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Farid. Ahmad, what would you like to add?
So again, what happened on the 13th September, I believe that we have to take a look at two levels. The very first level is the reasons, the actual reasons that led to the escalation. But the second are the political dissatisfaction from the process. The reason why it took place, because as you all remember from the spring of 2021, once the ISIS melted, Azerbaijan army started moving toward the west, and they reached the state borders. So once the state borders were reached in 2021, there was a dispute where the border line passes. And back then, in many issues, many problems, they were resolved by fist fighting. So Azerbaijan army could, gain the control over the heights, on certain heights. And back then we were so happy that it was all fist fighting. No one used armed weapon to each other. But this time, unfortunately, we saw that quite a, let's say, substantial armed force was used from both sides. So this is, for peace-building community, this is a situation that nobody wants to see, frankly speaking. And the reason was, if Armenian side, Armenian MOD says that there was a attack out of nowhere, Azerbaijan MOD is more detailed in its estimation, saying that the routes leading to those heights, the Armenians started planting landmines on those routes, hence creating problem for Azerbaijan soldiers to reach those heights. So, and according, I believe that there was a additional stuff, additional reasons, and there was a Azerbaijan army decided to react, and then we had one of the biggest escalation since the end of the war. It's actually even bigger than 4-day war in April 2016. So if you during the 44-day war, the very first announced figure of the killed in action, it was 2,783 people from Azerbaijan side. And then if you divide it to the 44-day war, so you had around 63 casualties per day. This time, the very first figure announced from Azerbaijan side was 50. So it's you can see that the intensity of the clashes that took place, it's not good. It's not less than the intensity of the clashes that was in the 44-day war. So these are the technical reasons why that happened. But there are political reasons for it also. Baku is unhappy with the developments or lack of developments. So Armenia's strategy is, that's the view from Azerbaijan, and I believe that there is a consensus on this issue, that the Armenian strategy on this issue is to postpone signing any deal as much as possible. So Armenia believes that it is Armenia's weakest point, so it should not sign any deal now at all. So Armenia should do its best to postpone signing peace deal for 10, 15, 20 years. When Armenia becomes stronger or geopolitical situation changes in the region, then Armenia going to gain upper hand. But Azerbaijan wants to finalize this issue, to sign peace deal and move on. And Azerbaijan has strong reasons for that, because we all see what's happening outside of our region. We see what's happening in Russia, we see what's happening in Iran, we see what's happening in Ukraine. So it means that nobody guarantees that in a few months we are not going to be epicenter of these developments, of the geopolitical developments. Actually, we are epicenter of these developments, but we are stable so far, like internally. And Azerbaijan is very much worried about its physical security. So it believes that this one item, the item that was on the agenda for 30 years, that should be done. The conflict with Armenia should be finalized. There should be some document so that whatever is coming, again, we see what's happening in Russia, in Iran, and outskirts of the region, and big challenges is coming for the South Caucasus. So it's time to build a unified South Caucasus to stand up to the common challenges. So that's why Azerbaijan is in rush. Well, so that's why when Armenia says that Armenian strategy is to postpone everything to the 15, 20 years, not sign any peace deal, Azerbaijan's strategy in reverse, Azerbaijan wants to finalize this issue as soon as possible so that we can have some unified South Caucasus to face the external challenges. And we should not be naive, they are coming. So it's Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia should be fast in this regard. So that's very important. So these are the main reasons, but Baku's Baku is very unhappy with the developments or lack of developments. But also there is another reason, important reason, is that Baku does not consider Pashinyan as a reliable partner for diplomatic negotiations. Pashinyan, for example, on the 14th September, Pashinyan said that he is ready to sign a peace deal. Or actually, he didn't say it. He said that he's ready to sign a paper that's everybody's going to criticize and blah. But it meant that it's the peace deal or the unpopular paper. And in 1 hour, he changed his mind. He came back and said that no, you got me wrong. I did not say that at all. So it's like Baku being the partner in negotiations with Pashinyan. A person who can change his opinion in just 1 hour is considered super unreliable person. So, and you don't know what to expect. So that's why there is a strong lack of confidence toward Pashinyan's personality, who is ultra populist, who is ultra flexible with his public statements. Again, he can say that he is ready to sign a peace deal, and within the 1 hour he came back and said that you got him wrong. He didn't say that. So this makes him really unreliable partner for negotiations. Also, the whole Armenian elite is gradually turning into the unreliable partner for Azerbaijan for negotiations, because, for example, a few days after the latest escalations that took place, former MFA of Armenia, Vartanos Ganyan, he wrote an article saying that the problem is with the person who promised Azerbaijan something, so Pashinyan. So if you follow his logic, it's basically saying that let's get rid of Pashinyan, who promised corridor or the peace deal to Aliyev. Once we get rid of that person, that's it. There is no promise. There is no person, there is no promise, there is no problem. So that's the logic. But that additionally creates the problem for Azerbaijan in terms that Azerbaijan does not believe overall these members of the Armenian political elite, because they are unreliable. So if there is a new person coming to the power replacing Pashinyan, how Baku can trust that person, that once the negotiation reached with that person, even if Baku agrees to start the talking, from the scratch, even if Baku agrees to talk to the person from the scratch, and they agree with certain things, where is the guarantee that Armenian elite is not going to get rid of that person? So there is these kind of problems arising there. And also, there's one big issue, like when talking to the international community and our friends in various international research platforms, diplomatic platforms, there is this established perception that the military is the main tool of Azerbaijan using against Armenia to achieve something. No, the economic isolation is the main tool. So Azerbaijan believes that whatever it did, this like economic isolation had its effects. So keeping Armenia in economic isolation brings results. So Azerbaijan believes that. So what if there is no result? What if Armenia decides not to sign any paper, not to move with a peace deal, and Azerbaijan decides to continue its economic isolation? Can Armenia tolerate additional 10, 15, 20 years of economic isolation? Can it do that? So, okay, we didn't have any progress, we stopped there. What's next? So it's not the military the main tool. The economic isolation is the main tool. So that is very important. Additionally, we have to take into account, like this is me personally talking to a few diplomats and researchers from international community and being surprised because there's a certain argument, for example, about the border delimitation and demarcation, which is like, it's an Azerbaijan argument that there is no border delimitation demarcation, but international community members say that, yeah, but still you can go back to the initial place, wherever you were. Like, yes, but what about the 7 villages in Kazakh? So nobody talks about that in international community, that the 7 villages in the northern part of the Azerbaijani and Armenian border, very close to the border with the Georgia,
Yes.
is under Armenian control right now. And there is a long history for that, because in 1994, when Azerbaijan wanted to implement its oil and gas strategy to build the pipelines, and Armenia, with the several interested countries, they didn't want that planned pipeline to be built. And as a result, they wanted to stop that. And the only way how you could do that, well, there was other ways. They tried but failed. But then the best way to stop this project from running was to cut off the physical land connecting Azerbaijan to Georgia. If they succeeded back then, there would be no Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan and other projects connecting Azerbaijan to Georgia. And now all of that big line in the border with Armenia is under Armenian control. What we're going to do with that? So this is very important issue. And I believe that the 13th September escalation now brought additional momentum to the process. It's very sad that there is overall more than 200 plus losses, almost 300 people died for the diplomats or the international community to launch this, to bring this momentum to the process. But we have to understand that we have to move fast. This is our time, and hesitation in the process leads to additional loss of lives. That's what we should avoid at all costs. So sorry if it took a bit longer. Thank you very much for your attention.
Oh, very, very, very big thank you to both of you for very interesting opening remarks. Now my question is, when we talk to the Albanian experts, they see that the time is clearly on the Azerbaijani side. Clearly, the military balance is very favorable to Azerbaijan. Armenia's ally Russia is distracted and is fighting its war of choice for extermination in Ukraine, and its influence, its importance in the Caucasus is now much smaller. Azerbaijan has become very important. It always was, but especially now for the energy supplies to Europe. And Azerbaijan has full support of its partner and friend, Turkey. While Russia is almost absent. So Armenians see that, and they say that they are ready for compromises, and it should not be the winner-take-all situation. Of course, what they don't say is that when the military balance was on their favor, they applied the winner-take-all principle, and they did not compromise when they could. What do you believe is the long-term solution? Because if the solution follows the military balance, then it will be shifting all the time. It will be shifting all the time, and we will not have a more or less permanent or stable peace, which is so much necessary for the development of the region. What the Armenians point to, especially, is of course, it's not official position. They say that more or less Armenia is ready to recognize Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan. Again, it's not official position, so I am just reflecting the position of some Armenian experts, not of the government, which of course I'm in no position to speak on their behalf. However, they say Azerbaijan is applying too much pressure and wants everything, including the extraterritoriality of Zangezur. So that's the question, number one question that they raised. The other question that they raised is, okay, the Karabakh might return to Azerbaijan, but then what's going to happen to the population there? What will be the guarantees of their security, education, culture, etc.? So would you elaborate, and I'll ask both of you on these two things, the corridors, Zangezur corridor, and the Armenian population inside Karabakh now.
Okay, try to be brief, but just would like to return to the question, the balance, because, and the comments made also by Ahmad that, you know, the Armenia trying to postpone the resolution, which is true, but, and there is the conversation that basically Azerbaijan forcing Armenia to peace, you know, putting the gun to the head. And that's why we would like to postpone and to see maybe more favorable situation, which if you look at the trend, economic, demographic, and, you know, the just geopolitical trend, I don't think the international community now in favor of new creation of new entities, dismantling the states after what's happening in Ukraine and some other places. The tactic of postponing implementation of our resolution of the conflict was employed by Armenia even before the Second Karabakh War, when Armenia had upper hand, as you mentioned, Shota, they had much more superiority at that time. So, but every time we accepted Madrid principles in 2009, the updated principles. 2007 was the initial, and then 2000. So from 2009, it was always postponing. And by the way, we were waiting also for some geopolitical favor, and probably the most favorable moment was 2008, when the International Court of Justice, you know, was a decision about the Kosovo, and United States decided to recognize the independence of Kosovo. And then was the Georgian-Russian war, which basically made Russian position in the South Caucasus even more stronger. And so Armenia always hoped that Russia will settle their problems, will resolve their problems, just like during the first Karabakh War in 90s, Russia sided with Armenia. But, you know, the situation has changed. Now Armenia also thinking about postponing, waiting for three factors. First, the outcome of Russian war in Ukraine. Second, we're trying to get United States and France on the board. Pashinyan meeting today, Macron, then Nancy Pelosi visited Azerbaijan, Armenia. And then we're waiting also for the elections in Turkey next year. So maybe something changed. I mean, none of these factors will influence, because it's hard to imagine that Russia will be fighting Azerbaijan on the Armenian side in the current circumstances. It's not going to happen. So basically, Russia now keeping the balance in the region for various reasons. And the second, United States and France will never, at least under these circumstances, will replace the militarily Russian power here. First, secondly, especially United States, I think the partnership with Azerbaijan is also valuable, despite all these lobby efforts. But I mean, the visit of Nancy Pelosi basics decides nothing. I mean, it does not change anything there. And the third, the also outcome of elections in Turkey won't change the new paradigm of Turkish foreign policy, which is unequivocally, I mean, the support of Azerbaijan through the Shusha Declaration, etc. So I think that's the time. That's the time to make a peace, not to postpone it, because the situation might be even worse. I mean, economically and in different, if we take different data. So in terms of Zangezur corridor, what's the proposal of Azerbaijan is, yes, Armenia saying there is no corridor in the trilateral statement, but there is the definition which says unimpeded flow of the people and cargo. So here we have problem that Armenia says that there is no corridor there. We always fight for all these definitions, different interpretations. The essence that Armenians enjoying free movement through Lachin corridor. If they want to enjoy it in the future, especially after 2025, because the agreement which we have trilateral statement only for 5 years. After 5 years, Azerbaijan might change the arrangement. Then as Armenians won't have any access, we might put the border point and our checkpoints. So in order to make ourselves two countries interdependent, I believe the philosophy that we will get also Zangezur, and it's not threatening Armenia. How it's threatening? I mean, people moving, it's not sovereignty of Armenia over that territory remains. So we are not questioning that.
So Farid, excuse me, just to clarify. So whatever is the so you are proposing basically the mirror image of Zangezur and Lachin, whatever is the modalities.
Regime, mirror regime.
Yeah, the same is.
Not the status of, because
Not the status. Yes, okay, yeah, obviously, yeah, it is Azerbaijan territory. That's yeah.
Lachin belongs territorially to Azerbaijan.
Yes, but it allows the safe passage to Armenians. And the same way Zangezur belongs to Armenia, but allows safe passage to Azerbaijanis.
Yeah. And we are thinking about just the regime, free flow of people and cargo. And here we come to the third, the second part of your question about the Armenians population in Karabakh. Of course, Azerbaijan, again, the core issue for us, our territorial integrity. We understand somehow the rights of Armenians, where security should be provided, but we are not ready to give them any special status because they had already autonomy, and their slogan was not about autonomy or rights. They were about miatsum, unification. So we know that. And we still, if we look at the Armenian narratives, it's all about unification. So within our constitution, we can provide certain rights. We have minorities, we have schools. By the way, we have the budget of Azerbaijan. We are funding schools in 2 languages, in Russian and in Georgian language, Georgian schools, which we have the Georgian population on our territory, which is smaller even than Armenian population. It's about 15,000-20,000 people, but they have schooling, and basically government does not interfere in their local municipal matters. Certain arrangement, of course, can be made also for Armenians, but if Baku is sure that there is no further territorial claims, no game, I think I don't think it's I'm not saying that it's easy, but I think it's quite doable. And the Lachin, by the way, corridor is also element of the Armenian security in Karabakh.
Yeah, really. Ahmad, would you like to?
Okay. First about the Zangezur corridor. The biggest difference that we see between Armenian and Azerbaijan position on it about the three-party statement. Armenia believes that this is a document open for negotiations. Azerbaijan believes that this is a document that should be implemented. So on the night from 9th November to 10th November, there was a decision by the leaders of Russia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan to sign the statement, which is called three-party statement. And that, whatever you have in there, you are going to implement that. But Armenia believes that there should be some change later, understanding that, well, once Russians are entered Karabakh, Armenia perception is that the Russians are there, Azerbaijan wouldn't dare to use force anymore. So we can do we can postpone it, we can demand change to that, because the main goal was that there is some Russian troops between Armenians and Azerbaijanis, in Karabakh, and that's achieved. So now we can ask for the alternative interpretation for the three-part statement. But for Azerbaijan, this is something that should be implemented, and it, as Farid said clearly, that it says that it should be communication lines protected by Russian FSB forces or another force, and unimpeded flow of passengers and cargo should be allowed. No naming it corridor like that. And again, like if there is the word corridor was not used, okay, we can stop using that. But the essence of it, that these are the communication lines protected by external forces, in this case, Russian FSB, and it is clearly stated in the three-part statement. And Armenia has no right to stop Azerbaijani troops, Azerbaijani cargo and passengers leaving the mainland Azerbaijan to Nakhchivan and back. So this is very important. So if it's about naming it something else, I believe that there is no problem for Azerbaijan. But the essence is there. It's a corridor. So, but the biggest problem between the Baku and Yerevan again is Yerevan believes that they can, Russians are in Karabakh, they can ask for something more. So let's negotiate based on the three-part statement. Azerbaijan sees as a part of deal. So it's agreed and should be implemented. No additional conditions on that. And in this context, there is one important issue also. Do Armenia refuse to implement it as it is in the three-part statement? If yes, if Armenia says that, well, my understanding of the issue and the Azerbaijan understanding of the issue is different, and they refuse to implement that, so Yerevan should be clear about that. It refuses to implement that. So that would mean that automatically means the three-part statement is not implemented, and hence the presence of the Russian troops in Karabakh, whatever is about the Lachin corridor, is not true also. But once you want to say that, okay, there is something additional, this is not how we agreed, so it means that you are not refusing it, you are not accepting it, and you want the things to stay as it is. And it's again postponing the process, which annoys Baku a lot. So Baku would prefer Yerevan to say that, okay, I'm not implementing it. That's option for Baku. There is it means that three-part statement is not working, so Baku will know something is that. Or I'm doing it. Again, Baku has certain scenarios for that. So that is the main problem between Baku and Yerevan in this case. Regarding the overall resolution of the conflict and the rights and security of Karabakh Armenians, first of all, like I'm a big believer of human rights, and I believe that it's not only me, that the meaning of the human rights is it is like that you have certain rights because you are human. That's it. That's the very fundamental issues. So talking about the human rights of Karabakh Armenians and not talking about the Karabakh Azerbaijanis' rights and security in this case, it's kind of making Armenians more privileged in this context. And that creates a lot of problem in this context. So that's why Armenians and Azerbaijanis, they have, again, I'm a big believer of human rights, and they have human rights, and it means that no one is racially superior to anyone. So that's why the rights also are equal. So how we are going to do that issue? So that's very important issue. And also, Azerbaijan is very much interested in resolution of the values the European Union platform, because Europe is the continent which has a lot of experience in resolving of these conflicts, and the European country at least had 2 world wars. And by the end of these world wars, there was a decision that it doesn't matter which ethnic group lives in territory of which country. We are not going to violate international borders, we are going to respect international borders. Change of the international borders is not accepted. And no one should have any claims toward the other one. And respect and creating all the conditions for the rights and security of the other people, right? So that's the formula of success. So that's why Baku is interested in European Union platform, because this is the one that because Europe as a continent has developed it is formula for resolution of this for this kind of conflicts. Again, it's respect of the borders and the respect of the ethnic groups within those borders, and that allowing them to use that. So that's very important issue in this context, and which the same should be applied here. And we expect that the European Union, I'm talking about the expert committee, civil society member of Azerbaijan, that the same principles appliance here also expected. And so that's why it is very much favored. And I have heard a lot in the past from Armenian colleagues that we are not going to recognize the borders created by Stalin. It was repeatedly said by Armenian colleagues in various events I was present. And I believe that that is one of the biggest mistakes that Armenian expert community or civil society, this is the borders, whoever created them, international borders, should respect it. So now, if Azerbaijan starts saying that I don't want to respect the borders created by Stalin, you have the situation what you have. There is no clear borderline, and you are going to have clashes once in a month. So that is why this is very, very important that we take the universal rules created by Europeans and the wider community. It's about the respect of the rights and non-violation of the borders. So I believe that this is very important. Thank you.
Yeah, I see. So the position is that Armenians, if they decide to remain inside Azerbaijan, inside Karabakh, they will enjoy the same rights as the ethnic Azeri population. There will be no privileges, no special cases. Am I right to read it this way? And the second question is, you mentioned that by 2025 everything might change, and who knows what happens with the Russian troops that are deployed in Karabakh. But then the question is the security of the corridors. Who will guarantee them after 2025? If it so happens that the Russians leave, what is the long-term solution that stabilizes this question? In the event that we have to think in advance that what if Russians leave, then who guarantees those kind of corridors?
Yeah, the interesting question indeed. But here, again, we coming to the philosophy of the resolution. Either we always rely on some third party to resolve our issues, or somehow with all these difficulties and tragic pages of history, we'll move towards common ownership of the South Caucasus. And when we're speaking about common ownership, the ideal formula, I believe, if Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan working together towards some common goals of cooperation. So who will control corridors? Again, that's why it's interconnected issues, Zangezur and Lachin. I think if we'll understand that we are dependent, Zangezur and Lachin, in terms of security, then probably we can provide security, knowing that if something happened in Lachin, then Zangezur also in trouble. But if we don't have this kind of interdependence, then the Lachin, again, might be, who would resist, this is our territory, internationally recognized. And events of the Second Karabakh War manifested that no pressure, diplomatic pressure, political pressure of the countries who traditionally support Armenia, it didn't work. So that's keep in mind for the future too. But if we'll create these interdependent mechanisms, I think that will be the best solution. Again, maybe for the temporarily, we might think about some third parties, but only temporarily to be deployed. Now it's the Russian forces. So speaking frankly, in Azerbaijan, we are not in mood to replace Russians with some Westerners now, taking into account that some countries indeed were very unilaterally on the Armenian side. But might be some other options. And actually now I'm thinking, why not Georgians, by the way? But why not, by the way? So we will create this kind of free countries interdependence. I mean, Georgia and Azerbaijan is a good example. I mean, it doesn't mean that we don't have, sometimes we have some problems with the prices, with some, incidents inside, certain areas, some also issue about the border delimitation, but we resolve it because we know what strategically we're on the same page. I think that's the future of the South Caucasus, but it's hard, of course, now to move towards this kind of understanding, taking into account the burden what happened. But I think that's the only option.
Yeah, I fully agree. In Georgia and Azerbaijan now can resolve any dispute because both know that we are in the same boat. We are so much interdependent that there is no other way but to resolve any dispute in an amicable way. And creating interdependence in Armenia too might be the much better way out than inviting the third parties with their own interests. But last question to both of you, and we'll probably finish with that. Now the Minsk group is nowhere to be seen. Where do you see the role of international partners? Ahmad mentioned the EU and how some EU mechanisms or platforms or views might be useful. Not so much in the mediation, but in general, looking forward. Where do you see any role for international partners other than Russia? Where do you think they might be most useful?
Yeah, I think I will second on this with Ahmad. I think EU, yes, indeed, ideal platform. The office of Charles Michel. It's not kind of EU. However, it's still kind of some of thoughts where EU was previously before Second Karabakh War, when our territory was under occupation and etc. But that's in the past. I think Brussels platform is indeed very useful. And probably we should continue to work in that direction. Other international actors, I doubt that France can indeed contribute something positively to this process. About United States, there are some questions, but might be if the United States, I think, will support EU. So rather than creating the split. But Russia, yes, Russia is a regional power, so we should not, we should take into account Russian interests too. We don't know how all this development in Ukraine will impact what will be the situation, but just we have to take into account their interests too, somehow to accommodate. I believe Russia is interested in certain processes like opening of transportation communications, that because for now the Armenian and Russia doesn't have the direct communication. There is now in Lars, you see 14 kilometers, the queue people running away. But anyway, so it will be something alternative for Russia, but also for Armenia too, connecting with our dots and Iran and, so that's why I think the Russia is in favor of opening of transportation communication. As far as the limitation, it also wants to control. Well, basically Armenia gave all the borders to the Russian control. So that's not our choice, it's their choice. But I don't think the Russia is really thinking about this final peace treaty. Final peace treaty, I think this is what we might achieve within the EU. I will finish with that.
Thank you. Ahmed, your last comments?
Yeah, a few comments about the who can replace Russians in Karabakh. Again, I also I'm going to agree with the Farid that Georgian presence there, or actually, we should remember that we used to be in the history for some very limited time period, but the Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan used to be part of the same state. This is called Trans-Caucasus, the same, the federation, which is yeah, well, we can try it once more. Let's do that, and it can start with the building joint peace building forces. If Georgian troops mainly can be present in Karabakh, why Azerbaijan Armenian troops cannot be present in the future? Abkhazia, Ossetia, there is the building common, and that's one of the big interdependence as we can propose. It's very like the idea. I agree that.
Ahmed, sorry for interrupting, but the Armenians was fighting in Abkhazia against Georgians. So
Ossetia, then we are going to send them to Ossetia, or no? It's going to sensitive, but that overall they're creating a Georgian Armenian peace building forces. So, but it can be like this is an idea like that we can analyze, but also we should not ignore that in the recent decades, one of the well-spread military phenomenon is private armies, private military groups. Can they serve peace building role? That's a very important issue. We see that they can fight, why they cannot do peace building. So flagless present in Karabakh for some time. So it's not nation flag being present, but there are options. The private peace building companies, etc., or NGOs in some way they can replace it. So there are quite many the possible options. About the cooperation of the international partners. So there is a deep belief in Azerbaijan that, or at least the people that I talked, they believe that depending on who is active from outsiders in the region, that can mean that whoever has a lower hand in the game, that might use that external power. So, for example, in this case, it's Armenia, which is trying to get as much external presence in the region as possible, right? So, we have to understand that external presence in the sovereign nation present, to what extent it's going to destabilize the situation. So I believe that there is quite a big chance that this is going to, but we should not ignore the positive issues that they can bring. And I believe that we being surrounded by three big countries who historically has certain historical claims toward the South Caucasus, it also quite something that we have to take into account. And I believe that one of the best points that we can take from the OSCE Minsk Group documents is that gentleman agreement that these neighboring countries and OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs, they are not going to have any military presence in the region, right? So that is one of the best issues that OSCE Minsk Group or international mediation process could come. So it's something that we could reach some agreement on this issue also. So there are role for the international mediation, international partners, but at this point, I would love to see them as balancing each other and balancing basically negative influence of each other toward the region, and letting South Caucasus countries to deal with their problems on their own. Because frankly speaking, I believe that at least for the last 30 years, or historically also, the matters of the South Caucasus was not up to the South Caucasus nations only. It's kind of like the South Caucasus matters were up to the old superpowers, whoever had some, some part of history, whoever felt that it has upper hand in the world matters. It has to control the region. So that's also something we have to take into account. So that's why now what we need from them, basically, to balance each other. And I believe that we have that chance because for the last 30 years, this is the biggest geopolitical change. The time that we are now, this is the biggest geopolitical change taking place since the collapse of the Soviet Union. So it means that from geopolitical point of view, we have much more chances for the peace in the region and cooperation in the region.
Well, Dr. Farid Shafiyev, Mr. Ahmad Alili, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure as always. And
The pleasure.
thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best.